something for that, the lighting mouse would like me. Thank you.
Do you want to answer any questions right now? Okay.
I thought it was at the end.
Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Do you still talk to Neil?
I do, yes, we stay in touch. They're still in the desert, so I try to stay in touch with all my students. If you look at the cover of my book, that's actually done by a former student also. So we stay in touch on Facebook, on Instagram, just like in my sobriety, right? I consider, sponsorship or mentorship a lifelong process. So I still see some of my students from elementary school, from middle school, from high school. I was just at the Who banquet last night, and I saw my student that I taught my first year at teaching at Palm Springs High School, and I think he's 37 now, which means I'm getting old. Who else has a question?
That's awesome.
Yes.
What kind of advice would you give a teacher who has transgender students and just trying to make it affirming so that they feel safe to learn?
I think that's such a great question, and for me, I think first of all, having that, making sure that you know students' names and that you get to know their stories, I think is important. But I also do a lot of circle work in my classroom when we sit in circles and we just do social emotional learning check-ins, and then that helps people to get to know each other and develop that trust in the community. So if there is an issue, we can restore trust in our school community. But if you just try to do a restorative circle without doing circles consistently and building those relationships, it will not work. But if you have a strong community and someone makes a mistake or does something on purpose, you can address it in a classroom setting and people can heal. And they can make that restoration. Because that's the point of a restorative circle, is for not only the person who has been harmed to feel safe, but the person who has harmed. Because a lot of times it's a cycle, and they learn that probably through their own kind of issues within society, which I don't give anyone a pass on hate because of trauma, but I think that it's an opportunity to educate everyone in the classroom. So having that compassionate lens on both sides and not it's easy to lecture. That's the first thing, is you want to step and tell people they're bad, but that's not the right decision, in my professional opinion, is to have a conversation with all parties and to work on healing the community. Thank you. Yes?
As you were going through your sobriety, right, did you feel like a part of you was missing, and now that you are, so do you feel like you're not really real, you're not being real with yourself, because that is really you, it's not being part of you no more? You feel like sometimes part of loneliness or something like that?
That's a really good question. I got sober in 2009, and when I first got sober, I did feel like that. I felt constantly uncomfortable in my own skin, and I've always kind of felt the other because I'm queer, I'm a twin, I'm Latina, but the sobriety thing is actually, now it's a relief not to have to drink, and I feel like I am my full authentic self. I think for years I lived under a veil of alcoholism that kind of kept me apart from my feelings, so I wasn't truly able, it took me years to be able to understand my feelings accurately. But I think now I feel like I am my most authentic self, but it took a long time, and I think I'm still kind of working on some of the things that were repressed. Because I started drinking when I was 14, and I didn't get sober until I was 37. So it was a long, dark road for me. But my first book, Embracing Dawn, talks about that it was an awakening and walking into, they say, the sunlight of the spirit. But it's not that simple. Sobriety is simple, but it's not easy. It's really uncomfortable a lot of times. Even, I'm going to have 17 years on August 22nd, and I still sometimes feel uncomfortable. But I do feel like me, which is such a gift.
You're taking something out of you that attacks to you. And it's like society, that's a lot of times they're judgmental, and that's why they say it doesn't work unless you're going to do it for yourself. If you're doing it for somebody else, it's really not going to work.
Yeah, you can't get sober for anyone else, and you can be a model.
It is difficult, because that's you, and some people they accept who they are, and it's sort of a lot harder for them to just put that away, because
Yeah, I think everybody's journey is their own, and you can only come to that realization through years of work. And I do believe that recovery, you have to kind of be sober to get recovered. Okay, one last question, pretty please. Yes.
So, in your stories, you talk a lot about repair with other people. How are some ways that you do repair with yourself?
That's a good question. So I have a morning ritual where I pray, I listen to the St. Francis prayer, I meditate, I work out daily, I try to eat well and be well, and then I give my grace that I give the rest of the world to myself, because I'm really hard on myself. So I think that's when I think, oh, I'm such a bad person, oh, Jackie's doing this, I try to talk to myself like my dog would talk to me, like, oh, Mom, you're the best mom ever. It's okay. So thank you. Francis is up next. Francesca, let's give her a round of applause.
And if you want to give your pronouns also.
Okay, can you hear me? I am not like Jackie, I'm a lot more introverted, but I wrote my book, No Hope for Normal, because I'm a professor of anthropology, I'm a science person, I do genetics, and I never thought I'd be writing a memoir, doing creative writing, that's for sure. But I used to tell stories about my adventures, and in my classroom a lot of times, and my students said, write them, write them. And I thought about it and tried, but it's a journey. And then I got some news that my son was transgender, and he transitioned. It was a real hard thing for me because not because I had any issues with transgender people at all, because I'm pretty liberal and I have them at the college, and it's no big deal. But I also don't want my kid being treated like a second-class citizen. That really scared me, the way that I knew society would treat me. And all my life, I felt like an outsider, so I didn't want my kids to feel that way. And that was the hardest part. And that kind of pushed me into writing my book about Hope for Normal, because dealing with this kid who's transitioning, who's now, been transitioned 15 years now. But at the beginning it was really, really challenging. And it was challenging for me as an open, liberal, accepting person. I can't imagine how hard it is for the kids when their parents are not accepting or open or any part of that. So that's the struggle I still feel when I deal with kids in my classroom. And so I'm going to tell you some stories. So I'm going to tell you about the day I kind of accepted it. Because even though I was going along with it, kind of deep in my heart, I was hoping it was a phase or, just a searching thing that adolescents go through and that it would pass. And I was called Frankie when I was in high school. And, we kind of go through phases. So I was hoping, I forgot my glasses. Can you grab my glasses? So I'm blind. Anyway, so then I just felt like I had to do something to make it real, to make it real. And so we had a little ceremony. I call this my chapter Rite of Passage. And even though it was ideally in my book, it was a rite of passage for him, to transition him, help him see himself more male. It was really about me in the end, being accepting. Okay, I'm not a good speaker.
You can also take the microphone off.
Yeah, I probably should. Okay, that's better. Okay, this is called Rite of Passage. Rebecca insisted on being called Ray now. If Rebecca had been male at birth, we would have named her Raymond after John's grandfather. Rebecca started to identify male, so it seemed logical to her to adopt that name. I reluctantly agreed to use the name. I realized it was harmless. I remember being called Frankie in high school. Sometimes Using a nickname gives you a sense of individuality, and I wasn't ready for more changes though. Ray wanted to cut his hair, her hair. This thought really upset me. Ray had gorgeous, thick, waist-length blonde hair. It shined like gold in the sun. Also, she was able to grow her hair so easily. It was the kind of hair that I dreamed of having. Ever since I was a tiny toddler, I would braid her hair every morning in a routine. She hated it when I brushed out tangles but it became a ritual time for us to connect. We would talk about what's going to happen in school that day, or what weekend activities were coming up. I thought of this as mother-daughter bonding experience. Cutting off her hair would end this special time. Ray hated the hair because it looked so feminine, and she was trying to look more masculine. She was wearing boy clothes now and stuffing her braid up in the hat when she could. I hate my hair. It's heavy, hard to wash. I'm going to cut it off, she said defiantly one day. No, don't do that, I begged. I love your hair. Hair is power. I always said that to make her feel proud of her long hair. I came from the generation of long hair hippie types, and I have been involved in the Native American community. Long hair has always been seen as beautiful and something to be proud of. You can't stop me, and I'm going to do it. I won't look like a girl so much with short hair. I knew she would just do it whether I liked it or not. How could I stop her? Oh my God, let me cut it then. I don't want you to botch it, I acquiesced. Let's plan to do it tomorrow afternoon. I figured that would give me time to start to get used to the idea. So I called my friend and colleague Linda to tell her what was going to happen. Linda was a professor of health and human sexuality in the biology department where I taught. I remember walking across campus when I first started working there, people saying, "Hi, Linda." I wondered who this Linda was and realized that it was Linda in my department. We looked similar. We both were tall, had long dark hair with bangs, and wore long earrings. She and I instantly became friends. We bonded when she discovered that we both had a lot in common. We like having issues with our mothers and being old hippie types who loved men and being sexy. She was a few years older than me, so I thought of her as my big sister. She had a lot of life wisdom, and with her academic knowledge of sexuality as well, there was plenty of fun things to talk about regarding men. We went out to lunch regularly and teamed up at department meetings. She hated the meetings as much as I did, and we did silly things like asking the magic 8-ball that we had hidden under the table about Linda's hot dates and my mundane married life. She even came to powwows with me, the Native American gatherings in our communities, and we danced together during intertribal dances. We shared a lot of laughs, but worked hard together too. We developed and co-taught a class in cross-cultural human sexuality, combining her human sexuality expertise and my anthropology expertise. She was my work BFF. When Ray started questioning her gender identity, Linda was a trusted source of information and moral support. "I'll come over and be there if you want," she told me on the phone. I was relieved that she had suggested that. The next day was beautiful. It was sunny and warm. Ray was ready to rid herself of the hair. Linda arrived, and I told Ray that she was going to help me. I was already choked up and saddened by the deed I was about to do. I was grateful Linda had come over. We went out to the front lawn in the warmth of the sun. I started braiding the golden tresses and stroking them for the last time. I thought about all the years of the motherly love embedded in them by brushing, braiding and nurturing and all. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Ray looked joyous and could hardly sit still. This was the day she had been looking forward to as much as I had been dreading it. "Cut it off," she said without any doubt in her voice. She knew what she wanted. I looked at Linda. Linda was smiling and she nodded. She knew this was something Ray needed to do. I started crying. Before I totally broke down, I took the scissors and I lopped off the braid. Ray was free. I held the limp braid like a tether to the past that had fallen apart. I never wanted to let go of this treasure. I felt transformed though. There was no going back now. Ray was male in my mind now, and Rebecca was gone. The little girl just vanished into history. You would think after reading it 50 times. I remember the stuffed animals she cuddled like babies, and the dress-up wardrobe of Disney princess gowns and tiaras. I was sobbing hard now. I had to sit down. Ray danced around the yard, laughing. He was transformed as well. I can't cut anymore. I'll have to take you to get styled into a boy cut. I could barely say these words. My stylist Jennifer can help you with that, I'm sure, Linda said. She patted me on the shoulder to reassure me, and we both knew it was the right thing to do. So in my book, I kind of go through, a lot of my life history, because so many times when I felt like an outsider kept welling up when I thought about being a parent of a transgender child. So it's kind of that journey. So I'm going to go back to some earlier days, go backwards in my book, just like Jackie did, and talk about some fun times. Because I used to have fun times, believe it or not. My background is, I wanted to be an actress, and I grew up in Agoura Hills, which is on the west side of Los Angeles. And there's a lot of movie people and famous people that live there, and so I kind of had that exposure. And so I joined the drama club, and we were in plays, and we did all that fun stuff. So this is about experience that happened then. There was a buzz in the drama class. Everyone was talking, and it was hard to hear what was going on above the din. "Sherry, what's happening?" I asked the girl next to me. "Someone is making a film here at high school and this weekend, and they want students from the drama department to be in it as extras. There are even some speaking parts. How cool is that?" "Oh, wow. I'll be there for sure, I promise. This might be my lucky break. I can see it all happening in my head. When films are being made, talent scouts come to watch," I hypothesized. "I would be noticed by a scout who would be looking for fresh new faces. The scout would sign me up with an agent. The agent would ask me to go to other auditions. Soon I would be chosen for major roles in blockbuster films and become a famous actor. I would have my dream car, my dream house, and more men after me than I knew what to do with. The possibilities of what could happen were exhilarating." The week dragged. I couldn't stand it. I wanted to become a movie star. Finally, Saturday arrived. The filmmaker, a local guy who was only 20 years old, who had gone to our high school, his name was John Landis. His buddy, Rick Baker, was a master at making monster costumes. They were producing and directing a silly monster spoof about a killer ape man, a missing link in the evolutionary history chain from the past who finds himself in modern times. The film title was Schlock. John was dressed up as the ape man, in the 8-man costume, act and direct at the same time. Most of the roles had already been cast. I didn't get to do anything but be an extra. The scene where I got to participate in a high school was in a high school's dance. About 20 of us met at the gym where they were given directions and the filming began. Many of us, jealous when George from our class actually got speaking lines, his names would go on the credit. Action, came the call. My friend Sherry and I laughed and danced as the music blasted. No one was really dancing as couples. We just rocked out to Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song while we were having a great time. The monster Schlock crashed in. Shocked, we screamed and ran around. Cut, do it again, and run back and forth to the doors like you're trying to get out, Landis yelled. We did it a second time. This time it all went well. We watched as some individual encounters with Schlock were filmed, like when Schlock smashed the pack of donuts in our classmate Jim's face. Soon the scenes they needed for the day were completed. Other scenes would be filmed the next day. It all happened quickly and efficiently, and then the excitement was over. No one talked about it much because we knew it would take time for the movie to be finalized. Other scenes had to be filmed at other locations. The film editing would be next, and then they would need to market the final product. Many months later, I heard Schlock was being shown at theaters. My friends saw it and told me about it, and I danced around in a little circle. They said that I could clearly be seen in the dance scene. I beamed. I knew I beamed knowing that I was on the big screen. I ached with eagerness to see it. Agora had plenty of upper-class families, middle-class families, so my friends were always running off to the movies or spending money shopping. Our family was still barely scraping by. Money was always short, and going to the theater was an extravagance I didn't get to do. I worked to earn the money. By the time I had saved up enough from ironing and babysitting to buy a ticket on my own, the film was not showing anymore. It wasn't a big success. It was only in the theater for a week or two. I never got to see the movie on the big screens. Tears would well up in my eyes, and I would mope around with my friends, just talked about it. It was just a reminder of one more way that I felt different than everyone else. Of course, I didn't get my lucky break by acting in the film Schlock. Schlock didn't change my life as I had dreamed. I had completely forgotten about the film until years later, when I was a professor of anthropology. One of my old classmates on Facebook made a reference to the film, and it made me remember. Not surprisingly, John Landis went on to become a huge success with other films he directed, like National Lampoon's Animal House, The Blues Brothers, An American Werewolf in London, Trading Places, Three Amigos, Coming to America, Beverly Hills Cops, and also for directing Michael Jackson's music video for Thriller in black or white. Rick Baker won Academy Awards 7 times for his master costumes and makeup skills. I found a DVD copy of the film Schlock for sale on the internet and bought it. It was only available as a collector film because the filmmakers had become so famous. Fortunately, I got to see it. Yet, I was right there, dancing away in my swell teenage beauty. I was surprised that the dance scene was different, with some kind of saxophone-y 50s-like song playing in the background instead of Led Zeppelin that I remembered. I laughed, remembering how I thought the movie would change my life. Then a crazy thought occurred to me. It just might have changed my life. I had no idea that anthropology existed as a discipline when I participated in the film. And at that time, I certainly had no intention of becoming a college professor. I didn't know anything about the idea of a missing link, or that looking for a missing link by discovering fossils that document how we became humans through evolutionary time was a part of anthropology. Did the film have somehow subliminally influenced my choice of studying human evolution?
That's too long, too stiff.
I like to believe that. I like to think that a tiny seed, a curiosity about human ancestry, was planted in my brain. A small gesture of gratitude. As a small gesture of gratitude, I make a point of showing the film to a new generation of students on a slow day in a laboratory class each semester. It's always well received. Perhaps John Landis would be pleased to know that Schlock is now a sought-after cult film with my students. I hear it's available on Blu-ray now. I'm going to stop there. So I have a lot of stories about all my adventures, my teaching, and basically how I resolved everything at the end. And how much time do I have? I'm at 20? Okay. So at the end, I just you'll have to read it and figure it out. So, any questions? I have a couple questions.
Some questions? How long did it take you to write the book?
Over 10 years. It took a long time. Again, I wasn't trained as a creative writer, so I really had to relearn writing in a new way because I was a scientific writer, and it's totally different. And so all the rules I had to learn, I had to break, and it was challenging for that reason. And plus, as you saw when I was reading, a lot of the material I write about is very emotional. So when you're writing this stuff down, it takes time to digest it and also rethink it in your brain. I believe the process is very therapeutic, and I think it really healed me on all kinds of levels. So it's a good journey. I recommend it to anybody.
Question.
Yes.
You mentioned that before, your son's hair was something that you guys connected over. So after he transitioned, what's something that you guys come over now?
I'm really close to my son. I think me being honest with him the whole time and forthright about it, and helping him through recovery after surgeries, and just kind of standing up for him when I needed to. We have a bond now that's pretty strong, and he understood probably before me that I would accept it. He knew that it would be hard for me and that eventually I would accept it. And that was a beautiful thing, that I felt like he had some maturity over me in that case. He knew that it was a process and it wasn't something I would get immediately. And he's doing great. He just finished his master's degree. Which is great because, these kids, there was a time when he was suicidal and he wanted to die, and he got F's and he was just struggling to be alive. And after all these years, he's thriving with a great community and his education. So he's really happy. We're really happy. And I feel like it's really natural that he's always been a male now at this point. It's hard to believe. But I do think back when I read these about my little Rebecca, because it's like mourning a death, when your former child's gone.
But you never stop being a mother.
Oh,
Thank you.
let's give a hand for Jaqueline. My name's Juanita Mantz. I go by Jan. You can call me Jan. You can call me Jenny. You can call me Juanita. Just call me. Okay. The reason I like doing readings like this is to see these intersections within stories. I always say I truly believe that stories can change the world. So the first story I'm going to read, I wasn't going to read this story, I was going to read something new because I am working on a book of essays and a novel. But since we're talking about identity, I'm going to read a story from my first book, which is called Portrait of a Deputy Public Defender, or How I Became a Punk Rock Lawyer. And this is a direct nod to James Joyce's Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. And it's really about how I found myself and how I came back home. I was a corporate lawyer, and I had dropped out of high school, and when I went to corporate law, I went to the largest firm in Houston, Texas, and no one knew I had dropped out of school. No one knew that, so I was this Eliza Doolittle. But it's only when I came home that I found myself, both as a writer and as a lawyer. So this story is called A Metamorphosis, and my mom's outside, so I'm kind of glad, actually.
Can you go a little closer to my
Yeah. I cannot make you understand. I cannot make anyone understand what is happening inside of me. I cannot even explain it myself. Franz Kafka, The Metamorphosis. In my sophomore year of high school, my metamorphosis began. I gave up being a goody-goody and ditched the swim team, along with school most days, and dyed my hair blue-black. Soon after, I pierced my nose, which was shocking to many at my high school back in the 1980s. I began wearing all black outfits to school, paired with my combat boots and an ankh necklace and thick black eyeliner, mimicking the eyes of Susie Sue, my favorite singer from Susie and the Banshees. By junior year, the change was complete. The new style got me a lot of attention. I would walk the quad with my best friends, Tracy and Melinda, all decked out in black. And sometimes we could hear them whisper, "Don't put a spell on you." With eager hand-wringing curiosity, we bought a book on Wicca and pledged to only do white magic. But in truth, the only magic we attempted was reading our fortunes on tarot cards and poring over horoscopes and astrology books at the Crystal Cave in Claremont, California. We were a 3-member coven, one without any spells, potions, or powers, and here comes Judy. But in truth, I was more of a poser Catholic Mexican witch, who was more style than substance, one who was really into the dark wave music by my favorite bands, like The Cure, Joy Division, The Smiths, Sisters of Mercy, along with punk bands like the Sex Pistols, The Clash, Generation X, the Ramones, the Buzzcocks, and my favorite LA punk band, X. My Mexican mother was horrified by my change in style.
Stay outside.
And would say disdainfully, "You look like a bruja, a witch. So ridiculous. Why do you dress like that?" My tias would say, "Que fea. So ugly, mija. Take off those combat boots." My white cowboy father, John, was much more gentle. And he would say, "Jenny, don't dye your hair so dark. It's much prettier brown."
Get away with murder.
What no one understood, however, was that my change from goody two-shoes to goth, punk-like princess was not about my outside. It was about my inside. It was interior, not exterior. The change, I mean. I recognized, even way back then, and although I was not educated about it until years later, that I had a melancholy sensibility. Add in a punk rock recipe for anarchy and bucking the system, and my change to punk rock girl was predestined in my soul. When I found the art, namely punk and dark wave music, it touched off a creative spark in me waiting to be lit. There was no going back. Homecoming dance, in my mother's opinion, was a disaster from the photos. My mom did not appreciate my Jake's mohawk or my shiny, iridescent black dress with lace sleeves that would make any goth girl swoon. She hated my blue-black hair, curled in waves, and my stud earring in one nostril. And my makeup, black eyeliner line so thick on the upper lid that it would take days to come off. And bright red lipstick and a cupid bow. My mom wailed, "How can I show these pictures to my relatives and all my friends?" Instead of bowing my head that day, I should have looked her in the eye and said, "I am and will always remain inside and sometimes out, a punk rock girl." I don't know, back then in the 80s, it was kind of dangerous to be punk, you know? It wasn't something that I took lightly, but now, being 54, where do punk rock girls go when they get old? Rockabilly. Okay, this last story is called Nancy, Drew, and Me. This is from Tales of an Inland Empire Girl. This took me, as Francis talked about, Jackie talked about, a long time to write, more than 15 years. I started it the day my dad died, and I finished it when I was almost 50. And I'm reading this one because we're in a library. And my mom taught me and my twin sister to read when we were 3 at a tiny kitchen table in Montclair. And it's the biggest gift that anyone can give to me, because I love books. I love books. It's my favorite thing in the world is to read. So thank you, Mom. Nancy, Drew, and Me. My room is small and messy. One of my favorite songs is Taxi Dancer by Sean Cassidy. The song is playing on my record player as I sprawl out on my shiny purple bedspread. The one Mom bought for me at Kmart with her tips. I have a poster of Wonder Woman tacked up on my wall, and when I'm bored, I imagine myself throwing my lasso around people and making them tell the truth. I wish my name was Linda. I think that's her name, the one who plays Wonder Woman on TV. Mom hates that I have clothes stuffed under the bed, books piled on the floor, Laura Ingalls' Little House on the Prairie mixed with Judy Blume paperbacks, S.E. Hinton novels. Mom likes to read just like I do. She calls it her escape. She loves romance novels and True Story magazine. Some of my books are from the library, and I bought some from the Scholastic catalog. Mom gives us her change from her tips that she gets at the Chinese restaurant she works at. Mom is many things. Angry, being one of them, but hardworking and generous being the other two. She is what some might call a contradiction. Read as many books as you can, Jenny, she says. That way, you won't have to wait tables like I do. We have a routine. On Saturday mornings before her shift, Mom takes us to the Ontario Library. Jackie, Annie, and I always check out the maximum number of books. I try not to drop them in the bathtub. More often than not, my allowance goes to the late fees. Jackie loves The Wizard of Oz, and I like The Hobbit, and I've read it twice. If I could, I would live in the library and burrow in the stacks. Annie, our little sister, always gets the little kid books, and I make her check out some more books for me. Annie is not as advanced in reading as we are, and right now I have decided to reread all of the Nancy Drew books and the Hardy Boys. I also found an author called Scott Fitzgerald that I like in the adult section. He writes about rich people. Mom walks by my doorway in her red uniform with the black accents from her Chinese restaurant. The closures are round-up little schools. Clean up this room, Jenny, Mom says. Something is brewing. Mom is like two different characters sometimes. Okay, Mom, I say. I nod my head. I squirrel into the covers and I read my Nancy Drew mystery. It's peaceful. I'm falling into the book, like into a well of water. I'm immersed. It is quiet. I hear my mom calling her best friend Mary, trying to see if my dad has driven by her house. Mom is mad. Her voice is getting higher and higher. It's not a mystery. You don't have to be Nancy Drew to figure out her business. She's easy to figure out. Mom paces by my door. I put the covers over my head. Maybe if I'm quiet, Mom will forget that I'm here. I don't know why Dad just can't come home. That's all Mom wants. She tells him, John, damn it, Is it too much to ask for you to come home instead of going to the bar after work? Dad just shakes his head at her. Judy, you can take the cowboy out of the bar, but you can't take the bar out of the cowboy. You see, my dad loves bars. He wants to own his own bar. Whenever Dad is late, I picture him sitting on a stool, waving his glass in the air, laughing with his friends in his green Mayflower uniform. Mom storms out, and I hear the door slam. I sigh with relief. I am still right in the middle of the book. In this one, Nancy is trying to figure out the mystery of the hidden window. When I was really little, I dressed up as Nancy Drew for the Ontario Library Book Parade after Annie stole my Laura Ingalls idea. It was a bunch of bullshit. To make it worse, Mom bought Annie a bonnet just like the one Laura Ingalls used to wear. Nancy Drew was less recognizable, but on the cool scale, I told Annie with a smirk that Nancy Drew would kick Laura Ingalls Wilder's ass any day. For my costume, I wore a turtleneck and a short skirt with tights. Just to make sure everyone knew who I was, I carried a spyglass and a sign that read, "I'm Nancy Drew." Everyone dug my costume. I told Annie, "You look old and dusty." That's it. I'm going to stop there. Thank you, everyone. Annie gets that story. She can steal my idea, though. I'm just saying. Any questions?
How did writing this book change the way that you viewed your childhood and your life?
You know, that's a really good question because when I referenced Jenny in the book, I didn't use my name Juanita for a reason because my nickname was Jenny. Jenny is a character, right? It's a memoir. Everything is true. It's not autofiction. But Jenny is me as I remember myself when I was a little girl and how I remember my mother and my father. And through writing the book, I realized two things. I had made my mother the villain and my father the hero. And it turns out that it was the other way around. My mom was the one who worked her butt off to pay our bills and get us nice clothes and taught me to read when I was 3. And my dad owned a bar and we lost everything and I dropped out of high school. And, do you know what I mean? So I think writing the book allowed me to see my past through the lens of a writer. And as someone who always loved to read, and I usually read at least 2 to 3 books a week, even to this day, and I'm a full-time lawyer. My mom and I and Jackie, we would read all the time. That's what we would do when we were kids and when we were growing up. So I learned to value reading. And poor Annie, my mom got busy and never taught me Annie to read, but now Annie loves to read.
She's all right.
I say fun to her mom. She loves her self-help book. So Annie, she loves her. Give her a self-help book. So, any other questions?
I just want to say, I totally like you feel. The process is therapeutic, right? I mean, it's just like analysis all over the place. You get to reevaluate yourself and your relationships, and it's a beautiful process because sometimes we don't take the time to think about the past like we should. And like you can really see things in a different way now. And my favorite chapter is when the actual scene of your dad dying. It's just heartbreaking, and you have such a way with words. It's so beautiful.
You need one of these.
So Francis and I wrote together for 10 years, and then Jackie stole her away from me. But she was my friend first.
And then Francesca and I edited together for 1 year.
I have a question. Since we're talking about the theme of identity, do you feel like your punk rocker identity was something? Because I think
bought
when
the
it
cane
comes
at
to
thrift
identity, a
store
lot of
because
times it's like
I brought my walker and not my cane, so this was 10 bucks. Because
Because
I'm very stiff.
how much do you feel like it was like a
I'm
seed that
85
was
years old.
planted that just bloomed, or like
knees
as you got
replaced
older you
I
kind
have
of
to
created
put-
that identity too?
I've had
No, I think
trouble
I
walking.
really wanted to be,
I have to
I wanted
move,
to
I
marry
can't sit still very long.
seditious. Me and my best friend Tracy literally
Yeah,
thought
but I'm
that we
okay.
were
I'm
like
85
the
years
coolest
old.
kids
Still,
ever.
you do
But
anything.
now when I think
Could be
back
worse,
where it
right?
started,
I'm
my dad was
77.
in
Now you're
Johnstown,
catching up with me.
and I
See?
hated country.
My dad lived to be 85, and he.
Live going right here about the recording.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't even know that.
My dad, my mom
make sure they hear 'em.
Okay, thank you.
Good job, Mom.
Works
And
out. I'm
so
gonna
I
put
do
it in
think that
cookie monster.
maybe my parents' obsession with
music. My mom listened to Richie Valens and all the 50s rock and rollers. My dad listened to outlaw country. And those are precursors to punk. And we grew up in a bar dancing to the Go-Go's and Pat Benatar. So, but I do think that, I like the punk rock identity, but I've had to kind of modify it as you get older. You can't really have a mohawk anymore. I would love to have one, but you can't. So. Okay, I'm going to give it over now.
Hello, I'm Malakai, and I'm actually from Auburn, Alabama. So I've only been in California for about 7 or 8 years. And I wrote Super Me, Becoming My Own Hero Through Change, Chaos, and Choosing to Love Myself. I wrote it was my journal during the pandemic because so much was happening, the world was changing. And I actually came out as transgender, like 2 months before COVID got really bad. So it was like I made this choice and the world was changing around me. So I started writing about what that was like because I was depending on caregivers, but nurses and all those things were changing because of protocol. And there were plenty of times where I may not have a caregiver for a couple of days. And that was my choice because the other option was boarding care. And I knew that I had worked so hard to move from the Deep South, I wasn't going to let the system win. So I was like, I'll figure it out. I just need a way to make it work. And so my book is really about me talking through some of the challenges. There were times when my caregiver wasn't really comfortable with the transition, so they would make comments, and I would have to figure out how to deal with that. And also just knowing that I was out in the middle of nowhere, I didn't know anybody, because I went from Alabama to Nebraska. And that's where I got my undergrad. I went to the University of Nebraska. And that's really where I learned how to be on my own. So when COVID happened, I was like, I did it one time. This is going to be really messy, but I can do it again. And so that's what I did. And so coming out as trans when your family is very religious from the South. My grandfather was a deacon in the church, so I knew choosing myself would go against a lot of the things that was his norm. But it was important for me because I think sometimes people see others with disabilities and they assume that we don't want anything more than to be in a hospital bed and not have a quality of life. And so I've always lived my life my way. And I've always said that I'm not really orthodox. I do things unorthodox because I check all the boxes. I represent everything that right now society is fighting. So I know that my life is going to be a blueprint for someone. And that's why I wrote the book, because I wanted nurses and teachers and social workers, those who are supposed to be helping us, to get the real stories. Because a lot of times, I think it's really hard to talk about the true struggle, especially when you're disabled, because it takes one moment for the system to be like, okay, we discount you, and you're just going to go, into this nursing home. And so a lot of times we don't speak up because it's not safe. And I was willing to do that because in order to be my true self, I had to get through the pain in order to understand my purpose. I always tell people that there's pain in your purpose, but it's preparing you for something. And I think things have to break down so that you can break through it. And so I know that everything I've done is adversity. I tell people, and I even say in my book, that adversity is my life partner. Because I know it's always going to be a hurdle that I have to get through. But there's a wheel, there's a ramp, and there's a dirt road. As long as my chair can get through it, I'll get through it. And so I tell people all the time, it may not look and you may not know your way of getting through something, but just one person saying, okay, I had many caregivers that were like, okay, I don't know what this is going to look like either, but because you seem so strong enough to do it, I want to do it with you. And I want to tell a story, because there was a time during the pandemic where I was interviewing for a new caregiver. And this guy came, and it just seemed weird from the beginning. And luckily, I had another caregiver there with me. Normally, I do these interviews by myself. And there was something about the situation where I was like, I don't really want to do this by myself. I don't know why. And he immediately came in and he started asking about my body. He wanted the caregiver to get me out of bed, to undress me so that he could see how to do my care. And I think it was in that moment, because at that time I hadn't had surgeries yet. So I knew that I was going to be in danger. And I think it really made me realize how much less awareness there is, because I think people think that there's one way to do something, or that disability looks a certain way. A lot of times people will see me in the chair and they assume that I'm not there mentally. And so I feel like I have to write 100 times more, because not only do I have to show that I can do it, but I also have to, it's like, okay, well, you can't show you're in pain today, because if one person sees that, they're going to discredit you. And I think having to interview that caregiver, and I ended up having to call the state because they said things like they love to see like little boys undressed. And I think it was at that moment that I realized, even though I was going through this transition, I had been, kind of locked up in the house because I was very quarantined. My doctors were, very concerned that I could come up and have COVID. I think I realized I was transitioning, and even though nobody was seeing me, I looked different. And so it was at that moment that I was like, okay, even though I don't have people around right now that's like encouraging me because everybody's in their house, the world looks different. That was during the time we had George Floyd and we had Ahmaud Arbery, and all these things were happening close to back home. And so I'm watching the world shift as I am also going through a shift. And it's so weird for me, even though I wrote this book a few years ago, I see some similarities to what we're experiencing today in the country, and that's why I think it's still so important. And I even will give my book to doctors and teachers and things when I finish, with specialties, because I just think that awareness is so important. When we're aware, we can make changes. And if there's not one way to do it, I've never been someone to do things the way you might do it, because we all have to figure it out for ourselves. And so I think the Super Me is more than just my memoir. I really want it to be a blueprint for others, whether that is someone serving someone that has a disability. And honestly, we can all be disabled in some way in a split second. And so there's so much more that we have to learn and just be aware of and be inclusive of, because you never know. Things can change like that. I think we're really seeing that today, just because with everything going on in the world. So it's really been, I think, even a journey. It's been 6 years since I started my transition, and there's still misgendering, there's still caregivers. I find it really hard to find caregivers because you don't know if it's safe, you know? So if I don't know you and have a history, it's really hard to trust, especially in this day and age. And so I often go back to my own book and just sort of remind myself, like, it's gonna be okay and I can get through it. I've done this a time before, and I was telling someone earlier, I think right now is probably worse than we were in 2020. And we didn't even realize maybe how bad it was going to get. So I really just try to live my life because I didn't see anyone else like me growing up, and try to grapple with, is this me struggling with myself because of disability? Is this identity? What is it? And really choosing myself despite the chaos. Many people ask me, why would you choose that route knowing that you have so many other struggles? And I said, why not? Because I deserve that happiness and that joy. And it may look different, but it doesn't mean that I shouldn't access it. And I'll just take questions because it's a little bit easier for me to just sort of talk. Yes.
It seems like there's kind of a superhero theme of your memoir. Like, how did you decide to use certain themes when you were writing the book, and what voices were you thinking of, and how did you want to inspire people?
I've always said that I've been my own superhero. I was really close to my grandfather growing up, but I didn't really have many other family members outside of my brother. And so when I left with the clothes that were on my back, and I flew to Nebraska, and I knew one person. Wow. And it was at that moment where I just had to put on my own cape and say, okay, you have to figure it out because there's no one else. And a lot of times in these systematic programs, they'll say, well, don't you have a family member or a friend? And it's like, no, I've been on my own for 12 years, so now I really push the system to show up for me because there's no one else to do it. So I think it really challenges people who are in that profession to actually do their job and not put it on family. Because a lot of times that's what causes ruptures, is when families are put in situations where they have to be everything. And so I've not only had to be my own everything, but I think I just had to be my own hero because who else was going to do it? Yes.
What advice would you give young people who are seeking to, accept their own identities?
I think the biggest advice I would give is try to find a trusted person. One thing that I'm really proud of myself for doing is right before the pandemic started, I actually found a gender-affirming therapist. And I talk about them in my book, and I had permission, I changed names and all of that, but really having someone that would just let you bring it all to the table. I grew up, in a Southern African American family where therapy was kind of frowned upon. And so really having to unlearn that for myself and say it's okay to talk, it's okay to trust. And I think I would just encourage anybody to find that person and just say, hey, I don't know what this looks like. And just find somebody that'll hold your hand. Because even if they don't know, they'll help you find someone that knows. And just never be afraid to take that risk, because you never know where you'll end up. Any other questions?
What advice do you have for people that are advising people with disabilities about how to access services? Like, what did you find was the hardest part about accessing help? Because it seems like you're so independent, but you need that support, right?
Right. And that's what you said is exactly what I face, because so many people look at me and they're like, oh, but you're so independent, you can talk, and because I am a good advocate for myself, a lot of times I encounter where services don't want to show up for me because I can do it. And I think the advice I would give is just, one, think about like what you want, what would it look like for you? Write it all out, and then just one step at a time. And I've gone, I even have gone to different companies and business and just talked about inclusion and how to be more accessible. Because sometimes it's as simple as when you call, ask about pronouns. Mm-hmm. Because there were a lot of times I would call agencies and they would hear my voice and, they would misgender. And then that would immediately shut me down because I didn't feel comfortable to talk. So I tell not only the person that's trying to learn how to be their own advocate, but people who are supposed to be helping us, encourage that. Figure out what that person wants. You have to listen to the person because it looks different. I think a lot of the systems in place now, they have one idea of what disability looks like. Mm-hmm. For me, I'm okay usually once I get in my chair. I still need like some daily help. But it's a challenge because, for example, I don't like to use wheelchair lifts. So to get in and out of bed, a lot of agencies, they try to force you to do forward lifts and those things. Well, I personally have seen a friend flip out of them. Mm-hmm. So from my own person, I'm like, I will crawl before you have to figure out how to do that because I don't trust it. And I think just a lot of agencies, they hide behind liability. And I'm not saying that you don't need that, but I think sometimes you have to really look at the person and the other factors around that person. And is that really going to help the person, or are we harming them more because we're not letting them access something that they really need?
I have a comment. I think it's really interesting how there was all these ways that and how we're all implemented having these experiences and the different ways to see those experiences. And when it comes down to everything that all of us have said, it's all about compassion. Mm-hmm. It's all about doing the right thing. Mm-hmm.
And I just want to commend you because your stories really touched me. I don't, my situation with my family is not that great. So just seeing someone being able to go through that journey and still come out on the other side of it and have what sounds like one of the greatest relationships with your son, I hold on to that because it lets me know that it's possible. So I just wanted to say that.
Hey, I have Cher and Jamie Lee Curtis as one model.
Amazing.
Well, get out
Okay, so that was the end of everybody's talk. So now you guys are welcome to go around the tables, buy a book, talk to people, and there's also the pastries in the back. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.